Guyana awaits the official results of the general election held on Monday. Candidates in the Democratic presidential race are preparing for Super Tuesday. Argentina and Chile have confirmed their first cases of the novel coronavirus. Hi, from the headquarters of Telesur English in La Habana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm Cristina Escobar. A partial set of preliminary results. A partial set of preliminary results following the general elections in Guyana were released on Tuesday. So far, the Guyana Elections Commission has only announced preliminary results for 139 out of 2,339 polling stations across the country. So far, the ruling APNU and AFC coalitions leads to the polls with more than 19,000 votes counted. However, the opposition People's Progressive Party has reiterated its plea for patience and calm as the counting of the ballots cast on Monday continues. Polls closed at 6 p.m. local time on Monday in Guyana, and the Elections Commission reported a mainly peaceful and orderly voting process throughout the country. 65 parliamentary seats are up for grabs. The ruling APNU and AFC coalition, led by President David Granger, is seeking to see off a challenge from the opposition People's Progressive Party. The election was called over a year after Granger lost a vote of no confidence. The central issue for many voters is how a new government will manage Guyana's promised oil boom. The results collection process is likely to be slow as some polling stations are located in remote areas and full partial results are not expected until Wednesday or Thursday. And moving on to another news, this week the Civic Council of Popular and Indigenous Organizations of Honduras will hold commemorative acts on the 4th anniversary of the assassination of environmental activist and indigenous leader Berta Cáceres. Relatives and members of the council will hold a series of environmental activities and demand justice. 7 individuals have been convicted for Berta's assassination, but the intellectual authors of the crime are yet to be punished. Berta Cáceres was killed in her home on the morning of March 2, 2016. Before her death, the social leader was immersed in a fight to prevent the construction of the Agua Zarca Dam across the river Hualcarque, which is sacred for local indigenous communities and key to their survival. Bolivia's former president Evo Morales stressed on Tuesday the importance of sending an international electoral mission to oversee the upcoming May 3rd elections, in addition to teams of observers, in order to guarantee the people's will. Evo recalled the evidence of the de facto government working to undermine the interests of the majority of Bolivians. This statement came 2 days after the Washington Post published a study in which 2 specialists in election integrity from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology dismissed the allegations of electoral fraud made by the Organization of American States, which played a key role in the subsequent coup against the Morales government. Other independent institutions have endorsed the victory of Evo Morales in 2019 elections, such as the US-based think tank, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, as well as the University of Michigan. The president of the National Assembly of Venezuela, which remains in contempt, stressed on Tuesday the responsibility of the legislative body to collaborate in order to elect a new National Electoral Council and issued a call to different opposition parties to overcome petty interests.
What we want to say to the Venezuelan people is that beyond the petty interests of those who made the moves in other scenarios of confrontation, to try to see how they can be depicted as winners in this process, we have to say that this is not the path that Venezuela expects. Venezuela expects seriousness, responsibility, and putting those partisan personal egos aside to work towards the great goal of achieving an electoral result with guarantees in accordance with the Constitution that ensure that the votes of Venezuelans, that citizens can decide the future they want for the country and choose their leaders, and as such, we will continue to build this path. We have said that we have come this far not to keep confronting, not to keep separating ourselves from anyone. It is precisely on the basis of depolarization that we want to build the path to reinstitutionalize the country, to no longer be in contempt, to fulfill a role as the legislative power of the government. We have to reach agreements, consensus. We cannot follow the path of destruction, swindling the hope of the people of Venezuela who look to us to resolve their problems in peace and through elections.
Puerto Rican independence fighter Rafael Cancel Miranda passed away at the age of 89 in his home in Rio Piedras in San Juan municipality this Monday. His death was confirmed in a Facebook post from his youngest son, Rafa Cancel. According to the local press, it was Miranda's wish that flags in Puerto Rico should not fly at half-mast following his death. Miranda said, "For the patriots, the flags should fly as high as possible, always free." Miranda was born in 1930 in the Puerto Rican municipality of Mayagüez and was one of the main leaders of the independence movement in the country and of the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, which he joined aged just 15. Miranda was the last survivor of the 4 nationalist militants who on March 1st, 1954, shot at members of the United States House of Representatives protesting against U.S. colonial rule over Puerto Rico. And coming up, voters in 14 states of the United States are preparing to select their candidates for the presidential race. Don't go away. Hi, welcome back. We begin in the United States, where the primaries known as Super Tuesday are underway. The Democratic presidential race seems to have become a Bernie Sanders versus the rest of the contest.
On the day when the greatest number of U.S. states cast their votes to nominate presidential candidates who will eventually compete for the White House in November's general election, a Super Tuesday begins in the United States. Why is Super Tuesday important? Primaries and caucuses are a series of contests in all 50 U.S. states, plus Washington, D.C. and U.S. territories, by which the party selects its presidential nominee. The goal for the candidates is to get a majority of pledged delegates, whose job it is to nominate the candidate at the party's convention. In all states, delegates are awarded proportionally among top winners. The Super Tuesday results will therefore highlight the chances of winning on a national level may be. What happens today then? Eyes will be put on the Democratic contest as Trump remains as the main candidate of Republicans. On March 3rd, both Democrats and Republicans will be voting, although polling times vary state by state. Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada and South Carolina saw Bernie Sanders emerging as the possible national frontrunner in the race for Democratic nomination over the past month. These are early voting states with almost 2 million ballots already casted. This Super Tuesday, 14 states across the country, Alabama, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia, as well as one U.S. territory, American Samoa, and Democrats abroad will cast their votes on the same day. On the Democratic bench, 5 candidates are running for the presidency. Former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, former Mayor Mike Bloomberg, and Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard.
And we now go to our correspondent in the United States, where these news are happening, Jorge Gestoso, to bring us more details on the events there. Thank you for joining us, Jorge.
Thank you. After voting in his state of Vermont, Bernie Sanders, the favorite to win in this Super Tuesday, repeated once again that the establishment is very, very nervous about his possible victory. And so much so that after the victory of his rival Joe Biden on Saturday on South Carolina, everybody ganged up with Biden in order to stop and try to defeat Bernie Sanders. Here, the option is a revolution, as Bernie Sanders called it, because he's aiming for social justice and economic justice, and almost the status quo for Bernie Sanders are the proposals of the other one. In order to try to create a stronger candidate, two of the previous candidates, we're talking Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, dropped their campaign and gave their support to Biden, same thing, and previous candidate Beto O'Rourke in Texas. That is going to be interesting tonight because Bernie Sanders is favorite in California, is favorite in Texas, and Joe Biden has expectations that in 7 states of the South where the African-American population is very strong, he could be having a good performance. Third, and the wild card, Mike Bloomberg, for the first time he's participated in these primaries. He expects to do well. He expected to become the option to Bernie Sanders. So there are two people that they consider themselves moderates that are trying to become the only sole person to challenge Bernie Sanders. For one side, Joe Biden. For the other one, Mike Bloomberg. Remains to be seen also Elizabeth Warren what role she believes it's going to be playing, because she expects to get some delegates, and she could be, as expectations anticipate, she could be negotiating with the two sides to see by which side she's going to join them. So very, very key day today, and we are going to be looking forward to results. We get back to you now.
And as we said earlier, Guyana is awaiting the results, the definite results of the general and regional elections that happened on Monday. And we are now going to have more details because we're going live to see what's going on in that country, where Guyana Elections Commission is giving a statement to the press.
As soon as the process there concludes, I mean, before us at the moment is the fact that we need to bring closure to the day's proceedings. Those POs, those DROs who are engaged, no doubt our investigation will continue as soon as they are free from the completion of the task that is before them at the moment. As it relates to a time for final declaration, as you put it, you will recall that I said it is the Commission's desire to have the final declaration of results in the earliest possible time. I will not commit to a date and time, except to say that as the process moves, I'm strongly assuming that by tomorrow midday, all the ROs would have had their declarations in the respective districts. That is as far as I'll go at this point in time relative to timelines for the final declaration. I'm going one day at a time, as it were. And your third question?
I was asking about real-time release from the ROs, anything like that, would be done.
All right, let me respond to that question. I wish to provide you with a URL now, which is a secure platform that will go live immediately after we start processing that information. And so you can go to www.guyanaelections.com. So that's a secure platform The updates will also be sent to you, as I indicated earlier, in JPEG and PDF formats via email, as well as via our Facebook page. So you will have those periodic updates. I can't say definitively if it's going to be every hour, 2 hours, but as the information comes into us and it's processed, and we have a sizable portion that we can release, we will proceed in that regard. So the URL again, it's www.guyanaelections.com. You can also check our Facebook page as well as the emails that you will receive in JPEG and PDF format. Do we have another question at the back? Just now, Mr. Chevron at the back.
Jules Brown from TV6 News in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm just wondering, in terms of the Commission's resources and so on, what would have been the biggest challenge in having this election take place, both in terms of not just the resources, but also the time in which GCOM would have had to get everything ready for this election?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for that question. I'm sure that you would have been following as it relates to our journey to this end. It took a lot in terms of, one, our operational activities, the planning in that regard. We started training, which is one of the longest subset in terms of our timeline for that. And of course, legally, a number of the statutory timelines is included in the Representation of the People Act, which guides the conduct of general and regional elections in Guyana. So on that premise, observing all those legal and procedural requirements, those are some of the key factors that we had to consider in our preparation for the conduct of these elections. And no doubt the conduct of the polls today is evident in terms of the amount of work that we would have had to put in on the ground, both logistically and operationally. So that's where we are at on that.
This morning at one polling station, I did observe some long lines. I'm not sure if that was a combination of the people coming out early to vote in large numbers, and also any change in the process. If you could help give me some clarification on that.
The lines at the polling stations, one, what we found on the ground was that some persons initially did not take the proactive step in checking to ensure which polling station they were voting.
Well, that was live statements from Guyana, where the General Electoral Commission was given answering questions to the press there. They haven't said when will the definite results will be published. They're just saying that probably tomorrow by midday could be a time frame that could work for them, but they're still working on this. Meanwhile, we continue with what's also on the news. The Democratic race to the White House will be definitely clearer today, taking into consideration that Super Tuesday is occurring today, when 14 states are deciding who should be the Democratic candidate. Joe Biden has received more support from, for example, former FBI Director James Comey, as well as Senator Kamala Harris, who also ran for the Democratic candidacy. Let's go to the analysis now of what's going on. We're joined by Professor Raul Rodriguez, who's here with us, and will give his perspective about what's going on in the United States. What does this mean for the Democratic Party? We're seeing, Professor, a candidate that was having a tendency of losing in the United States. I'm talking about former Vice President Joe Biden. And suddenly the establishment of the Democratic Party is backing him, essentially. Former running mates and, for example, figures like James Comey. What does this mean for Bernie Sanders?
Well, basically what it means is that the establishment of the Democratic Party has decided that Bernie Sanders seems to be too radical for their own views, and they are now coalescing behind Joe Biden as the figure that would be the main opponent to Sanders' nomination. We have to understand that after the South Carolina primary on Saturday, where Joe Biden won based on a traditional support of the African American community, two other candidates to the nomination have dropped out, and they have decided to endorse Joe Biden. That's a clear signal that the Democratic establishment has coalesced behind Joe Biden as a person who can oppose Bernie Sanders, whose agenda is based on a more radical ideas as compared to what Joe Biden represents, which is the center right of the Democratic Party. So we have two clear wings here of the Democratic Party competing for the nomination, and the person who is going to be the contender of the Democratic Party against Donald Trump.
If this move from Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Klobuchar around Biden and supporting and pushing Biden for a national contest with Donald Trump, would you say this is a good thing for the Democratic Party, taking into consideration the experience of the past primaries between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders?
Well, it's complicated. The fact that they've decided to go against Bernie, who has mobilized a lot of has a big Democratic base of support, has obviously the support of the Latino vote, which was shown in Nevada in a previous primary, has been able to even get some support of the Afro-American community, which was not supportive of him in the 2016 election, and has a strong support of the young people. It's amazing how a 70-year-old man can energize so much young people in the United States when he speaks about healthcare, when he speaks about education, when he speaks about the topics that really care to this a lot of these young people. So it is not a good moment in that case, because stopping Biden, stopping Bernie, as it seems to be happening, may turn off a lot of the big group of Democratic electors who are definitely this time decided to support Bernie at all costs, and that may turn off a lot of people. And really, what is needed to defeat Trump is that mobilization. Democrats, as we said before, are a majority in the United States. Hillary Clinton, who was not a great candidate by many means, won more votes than Donald Trump. So turning off and trying to contain or Bernie, and if that's perceived as some sort of a trick and everybody piling up upon Bernie, that may turn off a huge chunk of the electorate and may help Donald Trump get reelected.
Thank you so much, Professor Raul Rodriguez, analyzing the outcome of what's going on today in the United States, Super Tuesday, where 14 states are voting to decide who's going to be the next candidate for the Democratic Party that will run against Trump in November. And we're just in the end of this news brief. Wait for more analysis around what's going on in the United States and what's going on in Guyana as well, with the results of the election during the day here in Telesur English. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, I am Cristina Escobar. Please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and of course, telesurenglish.net, always with the news of what's going on from the South. Thank you again, and we'll see each other just in a brief moment.